for generations.
Extreme genes.
Dates in the Bible don't quite match the marriage certificate.
Extreme genes.
Uh-oh. And you have found us, America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. I am Fisher, your radio root sleuth, on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. And this week's show is brought to you by BYU TV's Relative Race, Sunday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. In fact, later on in the show, we're going to be talking to Jen and JD. They are Team Black, and what an emotional episode they went through this past week, and you're going to enjoy our visit with them. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the show. It's great to have you along. Also excited today to be talking to Kevin Miller. Kevin has written a new book, and it is based on his incredible family story from when he discovered that his last name wasn't really supposed to be Miller, but his grandfather changed it back around 1921 because of a murder in his family and a family scandal, and you will not believe what he discovered and how he discovered it. You're going to enjoy that coming up in about 10 minutes. Hey, just a reminder, if you haven't done so yet, sign up for our weekly Genie newsletter. It is absolutely free. We've got links to past and present shows, stories that you'll find interesting as a genealogist, and of course, I give you a blog each week too. You can sign up at extremegenes.com or through our Facebook page. Right now, it's time to head off to Boston, Massachusetts, where David Allen Lambert is standing by. He is the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. Hello, David. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, but I hear you're doing a lot better. So what's about this breakthrough 3 decades old?
Yeah, 35 years I had been looking for a breakthrough on third great-grandparents on one line. And I learned a couple of things from this. This is really interesting. I think it'll be of interest to people who are frustrated with brick walls. You know, like I say, I've waited since the 80s to get this. But I have been administering 6 different people, including 3 second cousins, on this one particular branch. And a 4th cousin match came up out of Australia recently that tied into 5 of the 6 of us, including a shared relative from England who shared these third great-grandparents. And so we discovered as a result of that there was another child belonging to my third great-grandparents who was born and christened about 36 miles away from the rest of the family. And as a result of that, that gave us the actual maiden name of the mother. And then we found her christening and her parents, and we found the dad's christening and his parents. So we got back another generation on both sides. There was also another person who descended from this extra child who matched 2 of my second cousins. So this was a huge thing for me. And what I got out of it was that you really need to try to administer as many tests from as many cousins within close range to you as you possibly can, because sometimes they will get matches that you're not going to get or your siblings aren't going to get, because I was administering for me and a brother and a sister and then these 3 second cousins. So as a result of all of this, we were able to put it together and finally get that breakthrough. I was up till 1 o'clock in the morning on Monday night, and it just
that's
exhausted.
Typical for a genealogist. That's kind of early, isn't it? Like 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it's not unusual. I make most of my breakthroughs late at night, and that was no exception. But it was huge. And the other thing to learn from it is be patient, because I was working on this in June, and there was no record that showed the christening of this extra child until sometime this summer. It showed up on Ancestry. It's not on Family Search. So you got to look in different places and see where they are. But these new records are coming along constantly. So it was quite a joy. And the people that I'm matching to in Australia are all excited about it. The match over in England is all excited about it. All of us over here are excited about it. So we finally got to where we needed to be. All right, David, let's get on with your Family Histoire news. Where do you want to begin?
Well, this story I want to tell you about actually has to do with a DNA match. Holly Becker, who's in her 40s now, over 20 years ago, was suffering from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She actually got cord blood, which aided with her recovery. Well, her Ancestry DNA test that she did recently led her to find that she still has, after 20 years, the umbilical cord blood from the donor, a 25-year-old Patrick Davey. So I guess that makes you kind of like blood brother and blood sister.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And I think the thing that's wackiest about this is the idea that what if you had a close DNA match to somebody who was involved in a cold case? Right? I mean, this is something we've never, ever seen before. So maybe that's the question for CeCe Moore at some point on the show. But I would imagine, obviously, they have to match people's actual DNA up to a crime scene. But this raises some very interesting questions. Wow.
It really does, and I think that it just goes to show you that when we thought we'd found everything we could use DNA research for, there's another.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you, DNA is being used in the next story for Extreme Genes, and this is about bone fragments from a famous lost aviator. Yep, Amelia Earhart is in the news again, and this is because Dr. Erin Kimmerl, who is with the University of South Florida, has discovered bone fragments that were in a museum that probably could be Amelia Earhart. So there is a living niece of Amelia Earhart, and obviously they'll probably be able to test mitochondrial DNA, or at least any part of that DNA, to determine if she may have found this aviator we lost in 1937.
Wow. Yeah, and that story has been going on since I was a little boy. It's been a long time. In fact, I had an uncle who was part of the Navy exploration team that was looking for her back in those times. Yeah. And
that's a story in its own right.
In its own right. That's true.
Well, I'd like to shine my blogger spotlight this week upon Amy Carpenter, who has a blog, Musings of a Young Genealogist.weebly.com. And one of the things that she blogged about this year, which is fascinating, are the 5 reasons to go to a genealogy conference. Because I want you to go to her blog. I'm not going to give you all of them, but I'll give you 3. Education, camaraderie, and perspective. Go to her blog and find out what the other 2 are. Well, that's all I have for Family Histoire News this week. I'll catch you next time.
All right, David, thanks so much. And coming up next, we're going to talk to a man who learned later in life that his name was not his name, and that's because his grandfather had changed it, and it involved murder and scandal and escape. It's an amazing story, and you're going to want to hear it all next from the author of a book about this whole experience, Kevin Miller, on the way in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. Hey, Genies, it is Fisher here, and episode 4 of BYU TV's Relative Race is in the books, and you can now stream it at byutv.org and by using the BYU TV app. And I got to tell you, this past week, as emotional as any episode you will ever see, especially with Team Black, JD and Jen, who are going to be on the show a little bit later on. So you're going to want to see how JD met a very close family member for the first time. He said he could not breathe. And you'll see why. As far as the race went, we had 2 teams that were way behind, one because of trouble with the challenge, and the other because they drove to the wrong street. You're going to want to see this show. And if you're not familiar with it, of course, 4 teams competing for $50,000 and meeting family along the way. Check it out. BYU TV's Relative Race, Sunday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, and you know all the times in between. Enjoy. Genies, Fisher here with exciting news for you because we have a new sponsor. It's called Memory Web, and I really do want you to go check these people out. These are the folks that are making it possible for you now to provide details on your photographs, like location and people and dates. You put them on your scanned photographs as metadata, which means those details can now travel with your pictures as you share them. How cool is this? Yeah, so inside Memory Web, you can preserve Grandma Sally's handwritten notes by linking the back of a photo to its front. And you can tag an uncle's birth certificate with the correct date and location. You can even show your connection to a famous relative in your family tree. I mean, there's so many different things you can do, and that's just scratching the surface. Plus, you can get 10% off an annual subscription when you sign up at memoryweb.me/extremegenes. Promise me you'll check it out. It's Memory Web.
Whether you're new to family history, a seasoned pro, or you simply miss the event in Salt Lake City, now is your chance to connect at Roots Tech London. That's right, the world's largest family history History Conference is expanding to London, October 24 through 26. Join us for 3 huge days of discovery and make connections to your past. Enjoy world-class entertainment, interactive booths, and hundreds of hands-on classes. Oh, and did I mention that world-famous entertainer Donny Osmond is one of the featured keynote speakers? Purchase your 3-day Roots Tech London pass today. Passes start at only £49. Learn the latest about DNA, explore recently released record sets, and interact with exciting technology. Join the excitement, join the fun, discover your family. Discover Roots Tech, October 24 through 26 at the XL London. Register today at rootstech.org/London.
Welcome back. It's America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And you know we're always looking to dig up the stories for you to inspire you to go out and find yours. And one of those stories is now made historic in a book written by Kevin Miller, my next guest. It's called Heart of Steel. It's based on a true story. And Kevin, we want to know the real story here because this is just phenomenal. Now, you were an Air Force guy, right?
Yeah, Fisher. I spent 8 years in the Air Force, serving my country. Those were great years. I had a good time. And then I woke up one morning and learned that my name isn't actually Miller. You know, we thought our name was Miller and learned that it wasn't. What happened was my uncle was at a funeral, and he got some newspapers that he then passed to us that detailed a scandal and a murder back in the 1920s. And my grandfather had changed our name from Puchalski, very Polish name. We had no idea. My father had no idea that wasn't our name. So we kind of learned it through that newspaper article, and we were having an identity crisis.
So who are we? So the name was changed to Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
To Miller, yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's a big change.
That's a huge change, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why, because my grandfather took all this to the grave. He didn't share that information. He didn't share a lot of information. And we believe because of the scandal and stuff that was involved, he was just trying to protect his family.
Did you know him? When did he pass away?
Yeah, I knew my grandfather very well. He passed away in 1986.
Okay.
But I was very close with him, and he was a good man. I didn't know him as well as I thought I did, though.
Isn't that the way it is? You notice that?
Yeah.
Everybody's got their secrets.
He was an incredible man. I mean, they lived in a big farm in Southington, Ohio.
Okay.
And one night, my great-grandfather was murdered in his sleep. And he was 12 years old, and my frantic great-grandmother sent him to get the sheriff, and a big scandal unfolded, and my grandfather and his 4 siblings found themselves in an orphanage in 1920.
All right, wait a minute. Let's break this down a little bit at a time.
Sure.
Your great-grandfather is found murdered in his bed? Is that right? In
his bed. He was murdered in his sleep. He was shot in the temple while he slept.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was a big story, and this is where the newspaper articles come in, because the Warren Tribune, the newspaper at the time, chronicled this story over the course of about a week and a half. So the story just kind of keeps adding more stuff to it, and there's so much detail in there that it's intriguing. It's incredible.
So today, of course, the assumption is probably somebody close to him did it. And so it kind of starts from there until the next of kin are kind of taken out of the picture. Then they start to look for other people who knew him, people who didn't know him. What was the order of things as they kind of tried to solve this case in the press?
Yeah, the order of it, I mean, initially what the story was, and trying not to give too much away, give too many spoilers away for the book, but what happened was my great-grandmother was tied and gagged, and then she sent my grandfather to get the sheriff. Well, when they came, she claims there was 3 men that pulled up in the middle of the night, tied her up, held her at gunpoint, and then stole $600. Some accounts say $500 from the farm, and then took off with it. And then they shot my great-grandfather, after they stole the money.
Wow.
that was the story that she shared with the sheriff and the law enforcement of the day. So they started investigating this thing and breaking it down and finding different clues, and the story starts to take a little twist here and there, and some revelations happen, and a scandal breaks out, and that's how my grandfather finds himself and his siblings stuck in an orphanage in 1920.
Wow! So Mom's out of the picture now.
Yeah, they're on their own. They find themselves on their own. And the orphanage that they're in is 1920. That's not a really good place to be.
This is like the Shirley Temple orphanage, right? You know, where everybody's mean and they just tell them everything to do.
Right. Yeah. You have. I mean, they were very strict. You know, as a Catholic, they had nuns and stuff there in the day, and it was a very strict orphanage. So my grandfather decided at 12 years old, he's running away with the intent that he's going to go find a job and come back and take his siblings out of the orphanage and take care of them. And that's part of what.
Wow.
That's part of what impresses me about my grandfather so much at such a young age, because he hopped a train and he made it to Chicago. He didn't know where he was going, but he ended up in Chicago. He found a job in a steel mill as a bar catcher. He lied about his age, I'm sure. He was 12.
Got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, and then he kind of gets taken in by a couple there, and he kind of finds his way into bootlegging, just running liquor. It's the 1920s, and he makes enough money to go back and get his siblings out of the orphanage and takes care of them.
Now, wait a minute. Now, how does he do that? Because when he left, he's only 12, and I'm sure when he goes back, why didn't they just take him back into custody?
Well, he kind of avoided all that. I mean, he kind of did it on the down low. He didn't. He snuck them out. I mean, he was able to communicate with his siblings. He called the orphanage, and he was able to kind of arrange a method of getting them out pulling them out of the orphanage and just stealing them away.
Wow.
So. Yeah, and a lot of this, I mean, in the book, I mean, I have the book as historical fiction based on a true story because I talk about all the stuff I know for a fact, and then I fill in the areas that I don't know, that I have to, in order to pull the story together and to get it to flow and make it a good story.
And I've done that, and you're absolutely right. You have to kind of interpolate what they may have said to each other, what their motivation may have been. And, a lot of books are written that way. A lot of historical novels, they tell you the real story, but they fill in the gaps. And I don't find anything illegitimate about that at all. Yeah,
because it's like I know this event happened, but how did it happen?
Sure.
And find all the facts about it that I can, and then give my interpretation or use my own imagination to figure out how this must have happened. Put myself in my grandfather's shoes and in his mind, basically, and trying to live that and trying to imagine, what he must have been going through at such a young age.
Incredible.
But he was the patriarch of our family, and everybody, all his siblings, everybody always looked to him. He was that strong person that, everybody, I know my great uncle Frank, his younger brother, when my grandfather passed, he just said, I don't even want to live anymore, and that Stanley's not here. It's just, that's how much they loved him and adored him. And he was just that strong man that never complained. He died of cancer, and he never complained. I got that when I was in the Air Force. I flew up to Wright-Patterson for a class, so he flew me up to the cabin there. I visited with him. I had no idea he had cancer because he never complained. He would never complain about it, and it wasn't too much longer after that he passed away.
So you said at the beginning that it was at his funeral that you got these old yellowed newspaper clippings. Who handed those out to you?
It wasn't actually at Granddad's funeral. It was another funeral of another relative, but it was some cousins. It was cousins of ours, cousins of my dad and my uncles, second cousins of mine, who had come up to my uncle and said, "Hey, you might want to read these articles," because they had been doing some research, a little bit of genealogy, and trying to track, their family, and the person they had working on it discovered these newspaper articles, handed them to my uncle, who then passed them on to us.
Oh, wow.
At the time, he didn't tell us what our name was. We're like, "Uncle Rick, what's our name?" We're having an identity crisis.
So
we don't know who we are.
Were these then online articles that had been pulled out, or were these actual original articles that had been saved?
These were original articles and copies. I took a visit back to Warren, Ohio a few weeks ago with my dad, who's 86, and my brother. to just try to see what else we could dig up. And we went to the library, and we were able to pull out even more newspaper articles related and printed them out, so I've got more of that stuff there. And also I wanted to find the farm, because I asked my dad, I said, hey, describe the farm to me because I need to describe, and he couldn't. But what he did is he handed me a stack of documents that he didn't realize what all was in there, I don't think. And in the documents, they auctioned off the farm and everything on it, I guess to help pay for the orphanage and everything else that was going on. So I had an inventory, which gave me a good description of the farm. But we didn't know the exact location, so we went to the Trumbull County Recorder's Office to find the deed. I found the deed. It doesn't have an address, but it has a legal description. And so it wasn't until I got back from Ohio, I was working with a historian at the Warren Historical Society, great lady named Cindy, just, awesome lady. She was so intrigued by the story. She says, we normally charge $18 an hour to do this. I'm doing this for free.
Yeah.
Just because I'm so interested in this story. And she sent me a plat map from 1899 because I knew the lot number was 43 off of the deed that I found, and the legal description and the plat map matched to a T. So I was able to identify exactly the 98.5 acre farm. So it was a huge farm.
Yeah. Yeah, and is it still there? Is it still farmland, or is it all developed now?
It is still there, and I plan on taking another trip back there because I want to go knock on some doors over there on the property because there's like several houses on that property now, and just maybe hand them a book and say, hey, I'll give you a book if you let me walk the property and take some video. And by the way, here's some history on this property that you're living on.
Yeah, I mean, what a story, right? Yeah, by the way, you're in a house where my great-grandfather was murdered.
Was murdered, exactly.
That'll get somebody's attention, especially at this time of year,
Oh, gosh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, I'm talking to Kevin Miller. He's from Burbank, California. He's written an incredible book called Heart of Steel, and it's the story of his grandfather's incredible life, a secret life after the murder of his father. And we're going to continue with more here with Kevin and how he dug up some of this and some of the adventures he's had with it when we return in 5 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history. Scientific studies have proven that youth who know even a little bit about their family history perform better academically and have a greater sense of personal confidence and stability. Genealogy is its own incredible superpower that arms our children with super strength. But how do you get your child or grandchild interested in studying their family history? That kind of stuff is just for grandmas, right? Not anymore. ZapTheGrandmaGap.com leaps the generation gap in a single bound. Author Janet Havorka provides you with useful and timely advice on helping the young people in your life become engaged in their own family history. Janet has an entire collection of books to inspire the young and the young at heart in fun, interactive ways. She also offers creative tips and advice on her blog and in her free weekly newsletter. Stop by ZapTheGrandmaGap.com today to sign up for Janet's free email newsletter with 52 weeks of easy tips, free downloads, and order your set of resource books and workbooks.
And we are back at it on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show on extremegenes.com. I am Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And as you know, we love sharing the stories with you. Things people find out about their families, how they unveiled some of these things, how you can uncover some stories about your family as well. And today I'm talking to Kevin Miller. He's from Burbank, California. He's the author of a book called Heart of Steel. And it's all about his grandfather and his amazing journey going back to a murder back in 1920. And I know you kind of shoved me aside on that in the beginning here, Kevin, but I'm thinking for it to be a scandal, somebody in the family had to have done this, right?
Yeah, you would be right to say that, Fisher. Yeah, that's kind of where it's going. My great-grandfather, he was the good old boy in Southington, Ohio. And he drank a lot, and he was very abusive. He beat my great-grandmother repeatedly. She lost 6 children.
She lost 6 children to this because of this?
Six pregnancies, were lost because of his beatings. He was a very violent, very cruel person. And then he started beating my great-aunt, Dorothy. Once he started beating the daughter, then that's kind of where the murder takes place.
That was it for great-grandma. She'd had enough.
Yep, she had enough. She probably was thinking, whatever you do to me, you do to me, but when you're touching my child, that's where you cross the line. So she took care of it.
Wow. Okay. She did it personally?
The actual story is that she conspired with a brother-in-law who actually took the money that she said was stolen.
Oh, wow.
And they showed up on the farm in the middle of the night drunk. The first night they'd gotten lost, so they're kind of bumbling a little bit.
They got a lot. They're not really good at this. Fortunately, they're not real experienced. Okay.
They weren't good at it. And the next day, she signaled them with a flashlight. They came in, and actually Frank Oliasiski, who's charged with the murder, as well as my great-grandmother, his hand was shaking. And she actually had to steady his hand for him to pull this off.
Oh, my gosh. What a story.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of the details, because you've obviously done tremendous research on this story, and you've written it as a historic novel, which I think is just great, because as we talked about in the first segment, that's kind of how you fill in some of the gaps that you're just never going to know. What were the conversations? What were the relationships? Things like that you can kind of fill in. So do you have the court files from all this?
I do. I have quite a bit of documentation, a bunch of documents that my dad had and he passed over to me. There is documentation that details the trial of my great-grandmother, the trial of Frank Oliasiski. I have all the pleas. They originally charged both of them with first-degree murder. Then they pled it down. Oliasiski went to prison for 20 years for second-degree murder. My great-grandmother went to prison for manslaughter. She got, I think, 5 to 10 years, and she served 3.
And so this is why your grandfather and his siblings all wound up in the orphanage. Was there ever a reunion?
Yes, they did. Once my great-grandmother had gotten out of prison, she was with her sister in Lisbon, and they did. They reunited. It's all detailed in the book, the reunion.
Now, this is tough because I want to talk about your grandfather now. He was just a kid. How old was he? 12?
He was 12 going on 13. So, he was just a young kid. And it's like, I'm trying to imagine putting myself in his head and thinking, oh, my gosh, my mother is gone and my father is dead.
Yeah.
And my siblings are in this horrible place.
Yeah, but he's getting into bootlegging in Chicago during the gangster era of the 20s.
Right.
Wow.
Right, because he's looking to make as much money as he can with the idea and the purpose of going back and stealing his siblings out of that orphanage and taking care of them himself,
That's incredible. But did he come through this period of his life? That's a very impressionable age, obviously, going into your teens. Was he able to walk away from it ultimately once he'd achieved his goal?
It definitely had an effect on him because later on, he started to kind of go down that same road as he got a little bit older. And as the story moves on, he goes to Canton after he's left his siblings with his mother. He meets my grandmother, who's a fiery Irish woman, and he actually buys a speakeasy bar, with the idea to take care of his new fiancée. And
he knows the business after all.
Yeah, he kind of goes down the road a little bit of his dad with the whiskey and such, and my grandmother kind of pulls him out of that and kind of saves him. So the last part of the book is their love story, and My wife says that's her favorite part. She loved the whole book. She goes, that's my favorite part, though. The love story was great between your grandparents.
Because it's obvious that he really was the patriarch of your family and the one that everybody looked up to, and he would do anything for them, wouldn't he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was that sort of person. Everybody looked to him for things. And my great-uncle Frank, when my granddad passed away, Frank's like, I don't even want to live anymore. What's the purpose of living now without Stan? Because they just looked to him for everything, so.
He was the guy.
Yeah. I've got a lot of information and a lot of background information on a website I actually created for this called heartofsteelbook.com. There's more stories and more information up there.
Well, the thing about it is, of course, for people who listen to this show, they're either just getting started in genealogy, maybe they're more established, but it's always interesting to hear what kind of records you found, how you went out to gather these stories. And obviously, there were people who knew a few things. Is there anybody left who, once they found out that you knew, spilled their guts about some of these times?
Yes, there was some. Now, because my dad's cousins, the daughter of my Aunt Dorothy, who was the oldest of the children who was abused, she sent him a letter, actually, and I actually got some good information because he handed me the letter that she had handwritten to him, because she seemed to know a lot about this story from her mother. And I pulled a lot of stuff out of there. A lot of the stories of the incidences of her being abused, are in the book, and I've pulled them from a letter. So they're actual incidences that really did occur. So I learned a lot from that based on the story. And just talking to other relatives that, somebody knew a little bit, this cousin would know a little bit about that. And, and the children of my great-uncle Frank, my granddad's younger brother, they had some knowledge of things, but they kept it hush. I mean, they swore an oath of silence in 1921 that we're changing our name to Miller, and we're not going to tell this to our children or grandchildren. And my grandfather took it to his grave.
Wow.
So it took a lot of research to figure out why, scouring these newspaper articles, scouring the court documents of the case, looking at old letters that were written, and just finding the property. We even went to St. Mary's Cemetery trying to find George Puhalski's gravesite, my great-grandfather. And we knew it was in St. Mary's Cemetery in Warren, Ohio, but we didn't know exactly where. So
any sign of him?
The records were kept in St. Mary's Catholic Church, and we found him in the records there, but we could not locate the gravesite. We don't know if it's an unmarked grave or if the sandstone's been worn since 1920.
Sure.
So that was one thing we weren't able. We knew, we just didn't know exactly where he was.
Well, it sounds like an amazing book. It is Heart of Steel. It's by my guest, Kevin Miller. And Kevin, congratulations on doing that. I would imagine you haven't written books before.
No, my professional job as a web developer, I'm also a technical writer, so I am used to writing, but writing a novel it doesn't always translate. Writing a novel is a whole different
It's a whole different animal. But congratulations on trying something out of your comfort zone to make sure that story lives on for generations. And boy, you've gone through it all. Court records, oral tradition, digitized newspapers, and you've really uncovered some amazing secrets. Congratulations. Of course, the book is available through Amazon.com, or you can go to heartofsteelbook.com as well. Thanks so much for your time, Kevin.
Thank you, Fisher. I appreciate it.
And coming up next, as you probably know by now, we're into Season 6 of BYU TV's Relative Race, and Episode 4 just aired this past weekend. And we've got Team Black in studio to talk about the experience and all the things that they're learning, especially about JD's family. If you haven't caught the show, check it out online and then hear what they've got to say. Yeah, it's coming up in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. Genies, Fisher here with exciting news for you because we have a new sponsor. It's called Memory Web, and I really do want you to go check these people out. These are the folks that are making it possible for you now to provide details on your photographs like location and people and dates. You put them in your scanned photographs as metadata, which means those details can now travel with your pictures as you share them. How cool is this? Yeah, so inside Memory Web, you can preserve Grandma Sally's handwritten notes by linking the back of a photo to its front. And you can tag an uncle's birth certificate with the correct date and location. You can even show your connection to a famous relative in your family tree. I mean, there's so many different things you can do, and that's just scratching the surface. Plus, you can get 10% off an annual subscription when you sign up at memoryweb.me/extremegenes. Promise me you'll check it out. It's MemoryWeb.
Have you hit a brick wall in your family tree? Are you unsure how to use your DNA test results to resolve a research question? Do you want to travel where your ancestors walked and need to find details before you go? Need help joining a lineage society? Whatever your genealogy research question, the answer is Legacy Tree Genealogist. Legacy Tree Genealogist has been helping clients all over the globe discover their story since 2004. Legacy Tree has carefully selected and trained professionals who specialize in hundreds of countries and languages, as well as probate research and DNA analysis. And when you need experts on the ground in the countries where your ancestors came from, Legacy Tree Genealogist calls upon its global network of on-site researchers who know the local language and how to get their hands on the records you need. Legacy Tree Genealogist is the world's highest client-rated genealogy research firm and is recommended by genealogy industry leaders worldwide, including MyHeritage, 23andMe, and more. Request your free quote today at legacytree.com. That's legacytree.com.
Genie's, it's Fisher with a thanks and a shout out to members of our Extreme Genes Patron Club. We are blessed to have so many friends of the show supporting Extreme Genes. Monthly contributions start at just $1 and go up to the cost of a couple of really tasty large smoothies with added fruit. Just $8. Patron Club member benefits include early podcast access, and our special bonus podcasts include photo experts, legal experts, DNA specialists, and so many more. You can even get expert advice on specific questions you're struggling with in your family history research. So go to patreon.com/extremegenes and get signed up. That's patreon.com/extremegenes. Now, I know those smoothies would taste great, but they're not nearly as satisfying as discovering your family. The choice is yours. So get signed up right now. We look forward to helping you out. And thanks for supporting Extreme Genes. And welcome back to America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. And this has been so fun watching Season 6 of Relative Race on BYU TV. And I'm excited to have new friends in the studio. It's JD and Jen. They are Team Black this season. And you guys were really just highlighted here on episode 4 this past week.
We had a good day that day.
It was a fun week.
Now, you guys are from Utah.
We are from Utah.
And where were you when you had this experience? You were in Denver, right?
Denver, Colorado.
Denver. So you were not too far from your home area there. And JD, just tell everybody who you got to meet.
Oh, it was a real pleasure. I got to meet my sister Angie in Denver and her family, and it was a phenomenal experience for us and an incredible day on the race.
One of those moments that you treasure forever.
Forever.
Well, the emotion was just so strong. You can't watch that without having a whole pack of Kleenex standing by. And
we lived it, but we still cried watching it.
I bet.
Yep.
Well, and isn't it interesting when you watch a TV show or anything that you video, the editing that's involved to make this thing all come together? Because I'm sure you remember how it was originally.
Yes, it was a beautiful edit.
It was a beautiful experience,
Yes.
but they edited it in such a way that it was just absolutely lovely. I had the great opportunity to have my sister come to our home and watch that show with us.
So she was with us,
And
and we
it
sat on the
was
couch.
a
and
tender mercy for sure.
Wow. And she shares your dad with you, who you found out early on you lost.
Correct. And she's been able to help me find a few of my dad's very best friends in high school and in life up until the point where he died.
So they were able to fill JD in a little bit more on details and exactly where he gets all of the goodness in JD.
Did you get a picture, though? Of course, we haven't seen that
I
yet.
know. Are we allowed to say? I think we might be allowed to say we do end up with a picture.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you this, Fisher, this picture that you see is remarkable. We are twins.
How
all the way
amazing
down
is
to
that?
our grandson.
Wow.
Like the genes are very, very strong.
Isn't that something? So how did you guys wind up on the show?
It's a fun story, actually.
We'd never seen the show.
We'd never seen the show. 12 years ago, my grandmother had told me that my dad wasn't my biological father, and I wasn't in a big hurry to find out who my biological father was. I was pleased with my life, and I was excited about where we were at. And then I had a very interesting experience a year ago where a strange man came up to me in a parking lot and told me that he had been speaking to my grandmother who had passed, which is always an interesting way to start a conversation.
Right.
And he said, listen, your grandmother wants you to know that it was a gift she gave you on Christmas, that finding your dad is going to be a gift. And so it started me wanting to go down that path and find my father. We didn't know about relative race. We did our DNA, no results. It was sort of a dead end. And our daughter called us.
We're just not smart enough to figure out the DNA.
Well, I had 400 fourth cousins, and I don't know if there's a lot you can do with that.
We had no idea where to go. Our daughter was watching TV and called us on the phone and said, Mom, you and Dad have got to do this show. And we basically put the ball in her court and said, if you figure it out, honey, we'll talk about it. And about 3 hours later, we had producers calling us.
Wow.
We feel like it was absolutely supposed to happen for us.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow. That is absolutely incredible.
So we were 5 weeks from the day we found out to the day we were on a plane.
Well, it's JD and Jen. It's Team Black from Relative Race. And, of course, we're coming up on episode 5 this weekend. 5 more days to go after that. And we'll see who winds up with the $50,000. Great to meet you guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks so much for dropping in. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And coming up next, another edition of Ask Us Anything on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history.
When was the last time you heard your grandmother's voice or saw your family enjoying life back in the 1950s or 60s? If the reason is you haven't known what to do with your old recordings, videos, and films, here's your answer. The Multimedia Center in Salt Lake City.
We brought in a video project to the Multimedia Center, and overnight they duplicated it to DVD so we could meet our deadline.
The Multimedia Center, 2870 East, 3300 South, Salt Lake City. Open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. Call 801-483-1717 or go to transferduplication.com.
Genies, it's Fisher with exciting news. The Weekly Genie, the official newsletter of Extreme Genes, is here. It's your Monday morning briefing on what's happening in the world of genealogy and family history and on Extreme Genes. Get all the details of jaw-dropping stories of discovery and keep up with the latest techniques in family history research. Get to know more about your favorite Extreme Genes personalities. And it's free. Sign up for the Weekly Genie now at extremegenes.com or the Extreme Genes Facebook page. And when you do, you'll receive David Allen Lambert's top 10 tips for beginning genealogists from the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society. Sign up today for the Weekly Genie. And we are back at it on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and ExtremeGenes.com. Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. David Allen Lambert has returned for another segment of Ask Us Anything. How are you, David?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
All right. Let's get to the question from Millie in Lafayette, Indiana. She has emailed us, I'm having trouble locating a record of my great-great-grandfather's Civil War pension record. He lived long enough for me to believe he should have had one. The spelling of his last name is somewhat unusual, which I think may be why I can't find it on Ancestry. Is there any other way to search? Thanks. Good question, Millie.
That's a really good question. Well, first off, Ancestry has the T288 index. Now, Fish, the T288 index was put together alphabetically, A to Z, for all of the Union forces. It's fine, but, aliases and misspellings. It used to be hard because you had to do it by microfilm. Ancestry does have the Soundex out there, so you could click that, and they might catch some of the misspellings. But there is another Ancestry option. That would be Fold 3. Fold 3, back when it was footnote.com, actually, I met with them and told them about another index that nobody had online yet. Ironically, it was to be a competition against Ancestry, they thought, but Ancestry now owns Fold 3, and the T289 index is online now. Now, that index on Fold 3 isn't alphabetical. It's regimental. It is organized by regiment. And this regimental index goes by state, the branch of the service, infantry, artillery, etc., the number of that unit, and then the company. Now, you can drill down a lot easier through 100-plus people in a company than you can through tens to thousands of Union veterans that may have a similar name. So if you use that index, chances are you'll see right away what pensions were given out for the members of that company, because that is the cross index. And the reason they did this, Fish, is because saying you and I are in the Civil War together, all of a sudden I need to get a hold of Scott Fisher, and I'm going through all of these Scott Fishers. Well, which one served with David Lambert? This way you had it by the regiment, so we could go and look and see we're in the same company, so we know exactly who it is, so we can ask for an affidavit from you, so you can see if my reason for a pension was actually a pension-causing event during the war, or if you could speak to my good character, etc.
Right. So you could get an endorsement, basically, for your application for a pension. Oh, I like that. And, the other thing about that, I would imagine, is you could see people who are maybe from the same town you were from, as it often worked out that way with many of the companies in the war, right? Or other family members that maybe you didn't know fought with your ancestor.
That's true. I mean, that whole family, associates, and neighbors come to play in pension files, because those affidavits, which are often ignored by genealogists, are like, oh, what's that? Whoopie-doo. But I always tell people to look for the pensions of those that gave the affidavits, because if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and you might find a letter about your ancestor in their pension talking about a different battle that they may have not been injured at, but the colleague would have been.
Yeah, that's right. And you can do that for the Revolution as well.
You can. For the Revolutionary War, War of 1812, Mexican War, Civil War, Spanish-American War, all of those wars have affidavits within the pension file itself.
Wow. All right, David. Thank you so much. Thank you to you, Millie. And if you have a question for Ask Us Anything, all you have to do is email us at, get this, askusanything@extremegenes.com. Talk to you soon, David. Thanks.
All right, see you.
Hey, that is it for this week. Thanks once again to our guest, Kevin Miller, for coming on and talking about his book, Heart of Steel, which is based on his discovery of the fact that his last name wasn't supposed to be his last name. And it was all because of a murder and a scandal in the family. And if you missed any of this, of course, you can catch the podcast and listen to it all over again and share it with your friends. But of course, don't forget, once again, sign up for our weekly Genie newsletter. You can support the show also through patreon.com/extremegenes. Talk to you next week. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.